Hi there, I'm Cindy Davis, Content Director for AV Technology.
And I'm Cynthia Wisehart, Content Director for Sound and Video Contractor. We're the hosts of Cindy and Cynthia Ask the Questions. We created this to bridge the conversation among integrators, consultants, end users, and AV operators and manufacturers.
Today's topic is creating high-quality broadcast AV. Think corporate studios, control rooms, live event production, brand experience centers, and visualization spaces such as corporate lobbies, all managed through shared control rooms and studio infrastructure.
So with that in mind, we've invited Matt Morgan, Market Development Manager of Broadcast AV, and Joe Davenport, Director of Business Development for Hyperconverged, both from Ross Video, to address some of the top questions and pain points that Cindy and I have collected from our readers who we hear the pain. So thanks for joining us, Matt and Joe.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
Great. Well, I'm going to get right to it. I'm going head on with the title of our discussion, high quality. When people hear high quality, what they're really hearing back is, you want me to spend more money. And in some cases, that might be true. But what we really want to know is, what do you mean by high quality? Are you talking about the best quality microphones and cameras? Because many have already made that investment in conference room AV.
Yeah, it's a loaded question for sure. It's an interesting one. And what I like to say a lot of times is the broadcast world didn't necessarily look at corporate or house of worship or education or all these other markets outside of sports and broadcast and say, hey, we think you need us. There was a need for corporate communications and for CEOs and executives to get a message across and to engage audiences for either commercials or stakeholders or stockholders and all these different people, right? So there was the need, which made there be a kind of a bullseye for broadcasters to say, hey, we should focus in on this and see how we can serve the market best. So it's not been necessarily broadcast saying this is the market we want to go after. The AV market said, how do I incorporate you more? And so this conversation of high quality or more costs associated with it, I actually like to say that it's more of it's a risk tolerance conversation. It's a resiliency of your system, and that's where the quality comes in. We have iPhones in our pockets and Androids and these small recording devices. So quality is subjective, right? I mean, we spent a few minutes alone on this call just making sure that this was okay, but I think we all agree that there's a risk tolerance here that we're able to accept for the message we're getting across, and so that's where a lot of our quality conversations have a infrastructure side. So I'll throw it to Joe, because Joe has those infrastructure conversations daily.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think resiliency is the key word when we talk about broadcast quality or high quality. To Matt's point, we can make a pretty image with just about anything these days, but how much trust can you put into those devices that are going into maybe a small room or a large room, right? We're here to our message is that it's about the resiliency side of things, right? Because you can't have a CEO whose salary is, massive amounts of money waste their time, right? We can't have them up there for a presentation or a message to their stakeholders or a company-wide event, and have them twiddling their thumbs while we're fiddling around trying to make the system work, right? We need a system that's up 24/7, that's reliable, and that you can trust. And then that's where it comes from the broadcast side of things, right? Television stations have been putting news and programming on air for decades. And the equipment that's been used to do that is tried and true, right? Ross Video has been doing it for 52 years. So, we know what we're doing with making sure we're putting messaging on air in a resilient and reliable fashion. And, I think that's what the corporate market is looking for now when they're looking for these broader messaging, platforms, right? It's one thing to have a conference room or a Zoom room. It's another thing to have an all hands meeting or a stakeholder meeting or a quarterly update for your partners, right? So you need to make sure that the systems that you guys are deploying are something that you can count on, that have backups, and that are not going to fail on you when you really need them to.
Got a follow-up question to that. So we're talking about, so in corporate, for instance, a lot of money has been spent, as you know, on the best, sometimes the best quality cameras and audio, but you're still talking about something different. It's not, you're talking about a different type of system. Is that correct?
Go ahead, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are, because it's one thing to just have do a video conference with one other individual. What we're seeing in the market in the corporate space today are higher end and more polished productions that are using tools that aren't generally associated with your typical corporate AV room, right? It's one thing to have a camera and a codec in a room with some microphones. It's another thing to mix multiple cameras together, put a lower third on there so that people know who's talking, what they're talking about, have high quality audio mixing and following the video, and then even getting into some experiential things, right? Like mixing and matching all of those things that are kind of above and beyond what a typical corporate AV system would be encompassed of.
So what I was thinking about as you were talking, since I'm looking at it from the integrator side, is this resonant with CEOs? Like if you're going in to specify or talk about a system, is that one of the key people who's like going, I want to walk in this room, I want to know it's top of the line? Do CEOs track to that? And if so, who's telling the CEO you're going to get a fabulous room that's going to suit your stature, type of thing?
Yeah, there's two individuals that I keep in mind when I'm having these conversations. And typically, whenever we have an opening conversation, it's who's driving this conversation. Is it you, the engineer, who wants cool new equipment? You see other people do it, or is it coming from the top down because there is an end goal? Maybe a CEO saw something and they just said, "I want to look that good, or as good, or better, etc." So when you approach it as an integrator, there's two people that you really need to focus on. The first is the person closest to the problem, which is the person who's charged with capturing the good audio, capturing the good video. I mean, I grew up in church world, and if you hear anything, or if you're at a concert and something goes wrong, where does your head naturally go? Back to where all the guys who are running it are, right? Whether it's their fault or not, that's where we naturally go. So we want to make sure that the engineer, we're checking all the boxes and making their lives easier, and in a way that they can repeat these wins and be confident whenever the CEO or the executive or the director of a team says, I need to do XYZ. You want your role as an engineer to be able to say yes. So how do I make my life easier to where I can sleep at night, take a vacation, and just execute on something well while I invest in this infrastructure? The people that we have to commence and sign the checks for, right? We have to show them that ROI, like that output of what do I get back from this? So there is a real tangible ROI and even engagement. So if I have an executive that's leveraging media to communicate to their team members, I forget what the survey was, but there's many surveys out there that say that most employees are disengaged at work. And it's funny how we can go from talking about tech to having a leadership conversation of engagement equals dollars, and that investment that's made in the technology equals retention, and engagement equals revenue. So there's a lot that we can go. And so I think understanding the engineer and what matters to them, and also putting it in words and a perspective for those decision makers to be able to make sense of, this is why I'm going to make the investment. We have to be able to speak their language. So if we can kill two birds with one stone, and the system props up something that makes a tangible ROI for a company that's realized, being finances, then that's a huge win. But we definitely need to know how to speak to both ends of that spectrum and fill that void in between of the mystery of how to make that happen, if you will.
Yeah, and for publicly traded companies, would you add that stakeholder to be the shareholder? Do you get any feedback that a CEO is like, when I go out with my message, if I look super professional, that translates to interest and credibility?
I mean, I think the feedback is in the proof of the customer base that we're seeing, right? We deal with lots of Fortune 500 companies in tech and finance and banking, et cetera. And they're continuing to invest into higher quality, more broadcast based systems for their messaging. So I think the word's definitely gotten out. And I think, from a CEO perspective, they've realized that, their image in today's, heavy content creation world that we live in, their image is as valuable as their brand. And I once had someone joke with me that, sitting at the conference table from about 30 feet away, looking like you're reading a ransom note is no longer acceptable for corporate messaging. And that's where, players like Ross Video come in to help, bolster up that image and bolster up that look.
Okay, so Cindy, can I grab my question that I was thinking about
Please
ahead?
go
I know I'm
ahead.
stepping all over your time for a second here, but I just want to follow on from this, that everybody's getting a lot of competing marketing and input to say, what is the most important ROI? They might hear that enterprise AI integration is the thing they should spend their money on, or security, cybersecurity, or whatever. So do you feel, and what is your answer to the idea that everybody has a reason why there's different priorities that should be served?
I would say yes, there is a reason, but and that's part of the conversation early on, right? Like, what is the ROI you're looking for? Like, what is driving the conversation? There AI and AV and in broadcast and in technology in general is still something where I feel like it needs to be managed. So even how we implement those things, right, is interesting, but it all depends. If you are trying to engage with your employees more, or there's a lot of engineers that I've talked to, and the investment's coming from the top down because the CEO finds value in creating content and leveraging media as a medium to communicate with their employees. Some CEOs say they're old school. They don't really care. And I would say maybe don't make that investment, because if you're not going to learn it, leverage it, then it's just, it's a negative to your bottom line. So that's a hard question, because it's pretty loaded and it's dependent on the team that's leveraging it, right? Like, some people have all the equipment and they don't use it. Some people have all the equipment, and that's where we get a lot of calls of, how do I maximize what's in my hands in order to, to get that ROI? So I don't know, Joe, if you have another perspective, but that's a hard one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, it's a great question. And I think all of those topics, AI, security, advanced systems for their messaging, I think those all happen in parallel. They don't have to be siloed into just one, all of our eggs are in this one basket, right? Like, obviously AI is on the top of mind for everyone all across any aspect of, business, right? Not just corporate AV or broadcast or whatever. AI is all people are talking about. And so is security, right? Security is a really big deal. So it's not that we wouldn't still be having those conversations. I think the conversation on investing on a broadcast quality system and boosting up your messaging and your image through your messaging is just another conversation in parallel. So it's one of those things, living in the technology world, that we do, that we're having to have multiple conversations across multiple different types of people that we're dealing with. So these are all things that everyone's going to be talking about. So.
So I'm wondering, can you give us some examples of how corporations can transition from relying on ad hoc? Because we all know it, and they say, "Oh, we'll use our cafeteria." That's really common, or our, lobby, or outsourced setups. I mean, they bring in, they don't want to use the ad hoc space. They'll bring in outsourced AV production companies. So how can they save money on creating an in-house production studio? Because there's, where's that trade-off?
Yeah, I'd say if you're spending, tens of thousands, even on multiple, town hall sessions or big presentations a year, that's when you should start having a conversation about bringing that presentation in-house. And what's cool is a lot of the integrators, especially, are focusing on managed services, and also with a lot of the broadcast companies. Like, we have a lot of our product offerings that are on-prem can also be deployed in the cloud. So think if I'm spending thousands of dollars on equipment coming in and other people running it, but I have a team that typically would run the conference rooms or the auditoriums 9 to 5, how can I leverage these things and maximize what I'm doing? So you can invest in on-prem one time, and now you can use it anywhere you want to. We have global customers that have individual studios or individual auditoriums, but the CEOs like to travel internationally and they have to follow that CEO. So they build a fly pack and they support them wherever they go. And that fly pack is something that just goes into a case. It's typically a router and a video switcher and a graphics engine. And so no matter where they go, they know they have quality. They have the same cameras that follow them everywhere, the same video system. The whole thing is just consistent. So if you're spending upwards of, probably $50K a year, I'd say maybe start looking at bringing that in-house. There's so many ways to deploy it. It's one of those things that, and I give a lot of broadcast manufacturers credit because we're making it way more approachable for people to make it simple. Deploy it quick, deploy it when you need it. As it's used, you get billed or you bring it in-house because we're doing this so much. I don't want something recurring and billing. I just want to bring it totally in-house, and you can do all those things. Like, it's not just a one-stop shop or answer. It's a grow and scale with you as you need it. But we have some companies that'll do, 3 or 4 high quality town halls a year at $30,000, $40,000 every single year, multiple times a year. Well, that starts to really add up, So that's when I would say you talk to an integrator or talk to a manufacturer, call us and see what we can do. Because typically you'll start to gain some money back in-house instead of that being something that just is a bottom line number. And the other cool part of that is if you bring that in-house, a lot of companies use that as a revenue driver to let their customers come in and use the space as well. So there's other ways that you can get creative about how we can leverage technology in-house and make it more, repeatable and scalable for whatever we want to do, not just for those ad hoc setups. When I think I'm going to use my cafeteria or lobby, now the cafeteria or lobby is an extension of that studio or just has the infrastructure built in to where I can go from one to another, and I carry my switcher around in a fly pack or in a Pelican case. And when I'm ready to use it, I plug it into the wall and the system knows what to do.
I've heard of those situations where, in fact, in particular in higher ed, I've heard they're actually making money on hosting these events in production. So that's a great way to get some money back.
I just saw one where maybe it's a little less tangible, straight up renting, but where they're bringing their customers in to use it. So it's a relationship building kind of situation that may not have direct revenue attached, but it's still furthering the business.
Yeah, and I think once you have those tools in-house, you're more likely to use them more often too, right? Like in Matt's example, if you're doing 3-4 town halls a year and renting all that equipment and hiring, companies to come produce that for you, sure, you're limited to those 3 or 4 productions a year. But if you've got them in-house, now all of a sudden your team's going to start figuring out ways to use those tools for other events, So it just, makes sense.
Well, and from experience, every rental company does it different. And you may have a solid relationship with the same rental company over and over, but they've got a new person or they've just got new inventory or whatever it is. And that kind of plug and play, set and forget way of going about it isn't available to you. And also the experimentation isn't available to you because you get that system long enough to do that event. But when you have it around all the time, how do you begin to noodle with it? How do you begin to explore it? You really can't do that with a system that just shows up for a one-time event.
That's a great point.
So let's talk about some of the applications.
Okay.
Some of the specific applications, whether it's corporate or higher ed or any of the other verticals that you're within, that you can say, okay, if you do this, here's the perfect application for why you should get broadcast quality AV.
Yeah, absolutely. I think quarterly updates are a great thing. Announcing new products where you want to have a whole bunch of wow factor. Think like an Apple event when they release a new iPhone or new software, right? That's a big deal. Earnings updates. You want to let everyone know how much money you're making them. You want to look good while you're doing that, right? You don't want to be, like I said, at a conference room table looking like you're reading a ransom note. I think for a lot of universities doing commencements and ceremonies and those types of things are all great places as well. I'm sure Matt has a few more to throw in there.
Yeah, there's a huge uptick in those lobby spaces, those brand experience centers. We've got really good examples of customers creating these experience centers where content's loaded for their customers to come in. There's no broadcast engineer or really AV crew. It's just somebody selling a dream to a customer, and they're able to put their customer inside the experience of what they want to sell or create. So you have a lot of like architecture companies as well who will do this, or maybe you see the projector mapping in for these architect companies, so you can see how a layout will be, and they can show you where a couch will go. And then on top of that, we've been calling it architainment. We have this whole experiential division now at Ross, and there's people using it for revenue drivers for city governments, things like that, where we can project on walls, or we can create engaging technology. When you walk into a space, now it might trigger, when you walk in, it triggers a row of lights to come on or certain content to play on screen. If there's a certain amount of people in a courtyard, maybe messaging that's happening at a mall or some sort of open space is certain messaging. Once it reaches a threshold from 20 people and more, now it's saying something different, and it's responding to the environment around it. So now we're causing technology to move to us and get a message across. So it's not just something that's in the background, but something we're interacting with. So there's all these different ways that we can apply, what our AV concepts, and we can kind of create it together by creating a little bit more structure so that it works with LED screens, works with true UHD quality cameras and output and things like that. So there's all these different ways we can segment it out to make it really powerful for a customer to get that message across, or to engage people with technology.
Cool. Great food for thought. Hopefully everybody watching will go back and look at their recordings and broadcasts and up that level.
And see what could be better. But can I ask one last thing before we just get some scoop from you about Infocom? So we talked a lot about the really awesome power that these types of systems have. So the last thing I wanted to do is just bring it back to kind of what Cindy said, which is, let's say you're not Fortune 500, you're not ready to do a big lobby. Is there room, do integrators need to know that there's a value proposition here for someone who maybe is headed there someday, or maybe who never will be there, but still is thinking, God, my conference rooms or whatever I've spent on, it's just not working for me. Is there kind of a mid-market pitch, I guess I would say?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. A lot of our products are what we call software defined. We also have products that start small and can grow big. So you can start with a product like Ultrix and maybe populate 1 or 2 blades and have a smallish system with room to grow. And then you can software define the functionality as you need it. So there's many entry points for all budgets, all skill levels. I think there's a variety of ways for you to get in. Obviously, we can do the big, large systems, but quite honestly, Ross Video was really started around the smaller to mid-tier market, and we still have a very firm footing there.
That's great question, Cynthia.
That's great. Okay, well, it's my turn, I guess, to say we're reporters. We're not just hosts. So any scoops for us for Infocom that we should know about for Ross?
We're taking a different approach this year. I'm pretty excited about it. I kind of refer to it as the Ross Experience Center. The whole goal is to show that outcome, show what you get if you're looking for some ways to enhance your auditoriums or to see that architainment. That'll be live on the booth where you can engage and interact with technology. We can show you the different environments, which I'm super excited about. I feel like Infocom's kind of like a show me show. Like it's not, sometimes it's the individual products and we want to know how that works. But I think for Infocom, people want to see that environment. Like, what are all of these things doing in order to give me this big outcome? So our booth will be great. I'm really excited for it. There'll be a lot of engagement with media there, which is going to be awesome. So definitely come by the booth to check that out. And then we're also partnering with Avixa TV to power the Avixa TV studio. We'll have some robots, the full on Ross kit there, running the whole show along with some other great partners. So a lot to look forward to at Infocom, and we'll be back in Vegas soon.
That sounds great. You know what? I've seen the Avixa TV in the past few years, and it's really a great way for people to say, "Oh, I get it," because really, that's the I get it moment where you can see what is needed, what the elements are that come together to make a broadcast work. Can't wait.
Yeah, and I want to remind people too that it's not just the end product that you get to see. This is for my integrators. You get to see that if you have, trepidation about broadcast, it's some completely other species. It's a chance to also see how the products work together, what the endpoints are, how software defined stuff actually works in the real world. Because I know I've had the experience on the booths, not just with you guys, but just in general, where you go in and you go, oh, this is more familiar than I thought. This is easier than I thought. This is not like I have to go find a broadcast engineer to hold my hand. So I would encourage people to look at both the outcome and how it came to pass with the equipment.
100%.
Great. Well, I think what a great discussion. Can't wait to see all of you at Infocom.
Thank you so much for having us.